it was just for fun. A silly, meaningless game that I regret every single day. It all started on a typical Friday evening. My friends, Lily, Mark, and I gathered at my house. My parents were away for the weekend, so we decided to spend the night sharing scary stories and watching horror movies. After a few hours, Lily pulled out a Ouija board. "I found it in my grandma's attic," she said with a mischievous grin. "Are you serious?" Mark asked, rolling his eyes dramatically. "It's just a toy." "No, Mark, it's not a toy," Lily said, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "It's a portal to the spirit world." We laughed, but I felt a small pang of unease. I had always thought things like that were a bit strange. "Come on, let's try it," Lily urged, setting up candles around the board. Mark rolled his eyes again but joined in. I hesitated, but I didn't want to look like a coward. We sat on the floor in a circle around the board. "Okay," Lily said. "Who wants to ask the first question?" After a brief pause, Mark smirked and said, "If there's anyone here, give us a sign." At first, nothing happened. We sat in silence, surrounded by the flickering candlelight. I felt the quiet grow heavier, as if the room were filling with something unseen. "Well," Mark said, "is this how it's supposed to work?" And then the planchette started to move. "Did you see that?" Lily whispered. "All right, who's messing with it?" Mark asked, his grin fading. "It's not me," Lily said, her eyes wide. I took my hands off the planchette, my heart racing with fear. But it kept moving. Even with no hands on it, it slid to the letter W, then to A and I. "W-A-I?" Lily whispered, reading aloud. "What does that mean?" Mark mumbled. Suddenly all the candles went out at once. The room plunged into darkness, and I heard someone exhale right next to us. We scrambled to turn on the lights, but they wouldn't work. Lily pulled out her phone, and its dim glow lit up her pale, terrified face. "We need to end the session," she whispered. "We have to say goodbye." "Yeah. Okay, goodbye," Mark said, his nervous laugh betraying his fear. Together we all said, "Goodbye." But the planchette started moving again, this time faster. It slid from letter to letter, spelling out DONTLEAVE. My stomach dropped. The room grew icy cold, and I felt something invisible brush past me. "This is just a joke, right?" Mark asked, his voice trembling. In response, a knock sounded. First from the corner of the room, then another from the opposite corner, and finally one right behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. "They're here," Lily whispered, clutching my arm tightly. From that moment, strange things began happening in the house. After my friends left, I felt as though I was being watched. In the darkness, I heard footsteps that stopped whenever I turned on the lights. The next night, I woke up to whispering. It was so close, as if someone was standing right by my bed. "You called us," the voice whispered. I switched on my bedside lamp, but no one was there. However, in the corner of the room, I saw a shadow. It moved on its own, even though there was no light source to cast it. I tried to convince myself that it was all just a consequence of the game. But deep down, I knew something had entered my home. I called Lily, but she didn't answer. I tried Mark, and his voice sounded strained, like he hadn't slept in days. "They're here," he said. "They won't leave me alone." That night, I heard knocking. At first it was faint and barely noticeable. Then it grew louder, turning into a pounding that echoed from all sides. I tried to ignore it, hiding under my blanket. But when I opened my eyes, I saw them. They stood in the corners of my room. Their shapes were blurry, like thick smoke, and their eyes burned red. I tried to close my eyes, but it didn't help. Their whispers filled the room. "You called us," they said. "Now we're here." My hands trembled as I froze in place. One of the figures stepped closer, its shadow stretching across the floor. I felt the cold radiating from it. "This was a mistake," I whispered. "I didn't mean to." "It's too late," they answered in unison. One of the shadows extended a hand, long and bony, its fingers like gnarled branches. It reached for me, and I felt a suffocating chill spread through my chest. I tried to scream, but my voice came out as a muffled gasp, swallowed by the darkness. Each day, their presence grew stronger. They followed me everywhere, to school, to the store, even into my dreams. I couldn't escape the feeling that they were closing in. Mark disappeared a week after that night. Lily ended up in the hospital after trying to hurt herself, saying they were inside her head. I was left alone, and I knew they wouldn't leave until they took me too. I decided I had to try something. I found an old article online about severing ties with spirits. It said I needed to go back to the board and finish the session properly. I retrieved the board from the closet where I had hidden it after that night. I placed it on the floor, lit candles around it, and sat down. "This is a mistake," a voice whispered behind me. I didn't turn around. I knew they were there. "I want to end this." "Leave me alone," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The planchette began to move. It slid to the letters, spelling out N-O. The candles flickered violently, and the shadows around me began to shift. I felt the air grow colder, like invisible hands were reaching for my soul. "Leave," I screamed. The room filled with deafening screams, and then everything went silent. I woke up the next morning, lying on the floor. The board was split in two. Everything seemed normal, but I knew they weren't gone. Every night, I hear their whispers, and I know that one day they'll return.